It's over 9,000!
Welcome, Super Elite Warriors, to Final Forum, a podcast for the discussion of all things Dragon Ball. I am your host, Jelly, an elite recruiting member of the Frieza Force on a mission to find the best warriors from across the galaxy to join the greatest army of all time. And I am joined, as always, by my new recruit co-host.
This is the Bekinney. Oh man, this is bad. This is so bad.
I really don't see how.
You what? You don't see how? There's a 100-foot tall plant that stinks like death trying to eat us, and you don't see how that's bad.
Well, okay, I'll grant that's not great. But I really don't see how that's any different from where we were when we landed on this horrible rock.
How is it not different? Are you not understanding there's a giant plant trying to eat us?
That's just it. As I understand it, this thing has basically been trying to eat us since the moment we landed.
That's shockingly not that bad a point.
I knew you'd see it my way. Listeners, the plant has remained rooted to the spot where it burst forth, but our ship has not responded to our auto-call homing device and come to us, so we've been hiding out behind a pile of rubble since you last heard from us.
I still don't understand how sometimes these podcast episode things come out when it's been weeks in between things happening, and somehow when it's been 2 minutes.
Given our adventures over the last few years, there is much you do not understand.
Well, you're one to talk.
Meaning what?
Well, I hardly think it's a fruitful area of discussion. We need to figure out how to get past that thing and get out of here.
Why can't we just fly past it?
Remember how I have a connection to the bird people of this planet?
Ah, yes, the unexplained connection that, were this a scripted show, would serve as a way for you to have an exposition dump that would assist us in explaining the situation and why we can't go with the easy solutions.
Right.
Does that have any relevance to the current situation?
Well, we've been lucky in that we actually suppressed our power levels when this thing burst from the ground because it can detect ki. Any attempt by us to power up and fly around it will be detected, and you see how tall that thing is. Its root system is massive, and it has almost total control of every single piece of itself. It would fling roots out of the ground at us in the instant we tried to do anything.
And you know all of this from a feeling you had when connecting to these bird people?
I mean, I guess so.
That's rather convenient.
I don't see how. You realize this means we'll have to do our best to sneak around from outcropping of rubble to outcropping of rubble, slowly, with our power levels suppressed, in order to make it back to our ship.
Absolutely I do. And it'll be perfect, because it will give us time to dive into this week's topic. And this week, we are taking a look at the final 5, maybe, episodes.
Yeah, 5.
We just talked about it. It's not like we just talked about it at all. But yes,
no, not at all.
The final 5 episodes of the original Dragon Ball, and that's episodes 149 through 153.
So let's do that recap, starting with episode 149, titled Dress in Flames. So Goku's just won the first Tenkaichi Budokai. What's the world's strongest fighter going to do next? Discuss the intricacies of in-laws, I guess. That's a little unexpected. Anyway, Goku and Chi-Chi are off to see Ox King and begin their life together in wedded bliss. Surely nothing can go wrong. I also learned today that Ox King got money. Big swanky castle and all the food Goku can eat. Speaking of which, Ox King attributes Goku's appetite to his grandpa Gohan. Interesting, considering where things are going to go in the future. They start discussing particulars about the wedding ceremony, and Ox King presents Chi-Chi with her mother's wedding dress. But tragedy strikes when an earthquake turns Ox King's castle into a volcano. Everyone evacuates, but the wedding dress was left behind. Ox King goes in search of the frock, but the lava spouts prevent Goku from following. Goku tries to stuff the flames with the Kamehameha wave, much like Master Roshi did the last time, but it doesn't work. At this point, Ox King has found the dress, but finding an exit is proving to be a bit trickier. He tells Goku to find the Bansho fan, but Goku recalls that Roshi threw it away and nobody knows where it is. Sounds like a job for our favorite geriatric psychic, fortune teller Baba. Sadly, Baba has a cold, so her GPS is a bit on the fritz. They head east, as it's the only clue they have. So where are Goku, Baba, and Chi-Chi, henceforth known as Team Bansho fan, headed? Well, it seems like a pretty generic village, but for some reason, Oolong is there. Wait a minute. That's not really Oolong. I guess all pigs just look the same to Goku. So Octagon Village, which is the place that they have now arrived, has never heard of the Bansho fan, but there is a Bansho spring, and it cures all ailments. Convenient. Chi-Chi decides against a dip, but Oolong's relatives aren't fans of that idea, so they come up with a ploy to send Goku on a wild goose chase to the next valley. Goku gets turned around and in his search ultimately finds the Bansho fan in the octagon-shaped spring where Oolong's entire village is kind of perving on Chi-Chi. It's more Goku just thinks it's the Bansho fan as he's like flying overhead. It turns out it's actually like the drain plug for the spring, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, but sure, let's just go with that. He also finds some Bansho glyphs on a column in the drain spring, and Baba says that she's seen these same images before at Kame House. And that brings us to episode 150, titled The Fire Eater. At Kame House, we learn that the rest of the crew still haven't returned from the tournament because I guess everything that has happened up to this point happened within like the first few hours after the tournament. So they're actually on a plane flying home at this point. Like nobody's home right now. It's just the turtle. Goku explains the situation to the turtle, and his name is Umigame, you blackhead. Assists it by digging through Roshi's closet. Ew. Fortunately, they do get some info. They must gather the feathers of the fire-eating bird of Mount Kiwi. Goku and Chi-Chi blast off to find said bird and have a fun montage along the way. Mount Kiwi, much unlike its name, is an active volcano. Our heroes investigate some lava caves for this bird when they hear like a rumbling, and this like large lizard pops out, but it turns out to be pretty friendly and accepts head pats in order to pass. But at this point, we learn that Shu and Mai have actually been tailing Goku and Chi-Chi. And unfortunately for them, Mr. Lizard is a light sleeper. Further investigation leads Goku and Chi-Chi to a giant egg that's like hooked up to all this weird machinery. And they also find an old man who's a convenient source of exposition. 40 years ago, a violent eruption of the volcano killed the last fire-eating bird, and this egg is still kind of like waiting to hatch. Now that we've gotten plot out of the way, Shu and Mai turn up to steal the egg. They also reintroduce our favorite villain, Pilaf. He wants to sell the egg on the black market and then use the money to take over the world. All right, well, I'll give him points for perseverance, I guess. Chi-Chi surrenders herself as a hostage and gushes over Pilaf's cute little baby hat. Shu and Mai finally give Goku a good look and start to have a slow realization. But before they can say anything, Chi-Chi knocks them both out. Goku punches Pilaf's like mole machine into the side of the volcano and it just explodes. But a new challenger approaches. The fire-breathing bird that was dead is not actually dead. It was just kind of like stuck in like a magma bubble or something. But a new eruption ruptures the cave wall and it pops out and it starts to approach the egg, which then hatches. Both these birds then run off. Apparently these birds are flightless. And Goku blasts everyone out of the side of the volcano. The bird's even thoughtful enough to drop some feathers, which is what they were looking for. But when they try to touch them, they disappear. Turns out the info that they got from the turtle was bunk, and it was just some fantasy story that Roshi wrote in his spare time, I guess. Oh well. Luckily, the old man does know where the fan is, I think. Ice Mountain, here we come. Oh, and it looks like we're not done with Pilaf either. And that's going to bring us to episode 151, Outrageous Octagon. Goku and Chi-Chi approach Ice Mountain, and it lives up to its namesake. A sudden winter storm knocks them into the forest homestead of the Octagon woman. She gives us some backstory on the mountain. It hates women. There's your backstory. Whenever a woman tries to climb it, a huge blizzard appears and nobody ever returns alive. They also ask her about the Bansho fan, but she's never heard of it. Apparently there was some confusion over her name. Her name's not the Octagon woman, it's the Teeth Argon woman. Anyway, no Bansho fan, but the snow at the top of the mountain is cold enough to freeze fire, so it sounds perfect. Goku flies off, armed only with the skin of one of the sentient animal people of this world, I think. I hope not, but you never know. Meanwhile, Chi-Chi will train in the deadly art of wifely duties. Pilaf also makes his way to the mountain and suffers the same fate as Goku and Chi-Chi earlier. However, they crash on the mountain itself as opposed to like in the forest next to it. Guess that's what you get for being progressive and hiring women instead of making them wives. They crash land on the mountain and Goku runs into them while trying to free their ship. Their missiles freeze midair means Goku's in the right place. The snow is cold enough, in fact, to freeze fire. He toys with them for a little bit and then explains the curse. Pilaf banishes Mai for being a feminist and all the bad things stop happening. Pilaf's ambush on Goku is nearly successful until Mai shows back up to undo the patriarchy. As Goku tries to bring the snow down from the mountain, Chi-Chi happens to stumble upon the Bansho fan, mistaking it for the dustpan. Good thing, too, is the snow didn't survive the trip. Remember, kids, if you want good things to happen to you, be a housewife. Pilaf swoops in to steal it, but falls victim to his own ignorance again. Toothless Lady throws in some honey and her congratulations as well for finding the Bansho fan. They get the fan back to Fry Pan Mountain, but turns out it's unable to put out the flames. What are our heroes going to do? That brings us to episode 152, titled The Mystery of the Dark World. So the Bansho fan didn't work. Now what? Baba appears seemingly out of nowhere to inform Goku that the real reason the fire started is due to the eightfold furnace, and the Bansho fan was used to fan the flames of that furnace, so of course they're not going to put them out now.
Oh, yeah.
Our only chance now is to climb Mount Gogyo and ask the Pyre Keeper to turn down the thermostat. Dads everywhere can be heard rejoicing in the background. So where is Mount Gogyo? On the other side of the world, of course, but that's not all. It's a mystical place that is connected to the afterlife and guarded by evil spirits. The perfect mission for the world's best martial artist and owner of his own flying cloud. We get some nice travel shots, and before you know it, our heroes are at the mountain gate. Chi-Chi has the bright idea of calling the flying eagles to fly them to the top of Mount Dune, but Kitoon doesn't show up. Before long, Goku's faced with 5 samurai warriors. He attempts to face them in battle, but they prove to be a fair bit tougher than they look. Their speed makes them impossible to hit, and their attacks are tough to dodge. Goku takes this all in stride, however, and one Kamehameha later, they've been blown to bits. Yeah, until the bits fly back together and make a giant stone golem. That's okay, though, because the Bansho fan is his weakness, apparently. In response, a giant dragon shows up, and the samurai return in much greater numbers, and this time armed with bow and arrows, to pelt our heroes with volleys of arrows. The two are separated, and Chi-Chi tries to get Goku to follow her to an idyllic field of flowers, because she assumes there's like no monsters there. But Goku notices something. His injuries from earlier weren't real. He pulls another Operation Swallowed Whole, and we learn that this has all been an illusion to keep them from their goal. Now that they know the truth, can they find the Eightfold Furnace? Well, of course. And even better, the Pyre Keeper is Grandpa Gohan. Well, whoops, nope, that was just a bad assumption. He's just a part-timer. The real Pyre Keeper is a giant woman that loves carbs. Nice. Goku asks to turn off the furnace, but she says that can't happen, or the world will literally go to hell. And that brings us to the final episode, titled The End, The Beginning. So Anin, that's the name of the Pyre Keeper, seems completely uninterested in turning off the Eightfold Furnace. This makes for an uncharacteristically grumpy Goku. He actually passes up the chance to eat and even knocks her fork to the ground. His rudeness snaps her out of her distracted state and she points to the spigot. I guess it's the gas line? I'm not really sure exactly what. It's not really explained, but it looks like a gas line. Goku leaps into action, but Gohan gets in his way. Why is he against turning off the gas? Well, you see, the pan that sits on the furnace emits this mist that floats out of the mountain, and those that have passed on Earth use the mist to reach the next world. No mist, no rest for the dead. So why not just shut it off for a tiny bit so Ox King can escape? Well, because it would take 200 years to relight it. Chi-Chi begs for a solution, but Anin just attacks Goku instead. The fight heats up until Goku pulls out the Bansho fan, which improves Anin's mood, and she offers an actual solution for once. In order to fix the furnace, they will need fire-eating bird eggshell and Octagon bee honey. Oh, hey, look at that. Chi-Chi already has both of those things from their earlier adventures. But that's not all. Goku will have to enter the lit furnace and patch the hole manually. The idea is to use the Bansho fan to beat back the flames and complete the work in the few seconds before they return. There's a number of scenes to appropriately ratchet up tension. They're really kind of cutting it close, and things are looking dire for Ox King. And Anin lifts the pot. Goku jumps in, reaches the bottom, and can't find the hole. Oh no! Goku finally checks under his feet and finds the hole. Ox King's castle is now saved. But will Goku make it out of the furnace in time? I'm guessing yes, considering there's like hundreds more episodes of Dragon Ball to go. But I really like how it took 2 seconds for him to hit the bottom of the furnace, but it takes like 2 minutes for him to jump out with a tailwind and with using the power pole to accelerate him. Anyway, well, at least these shots are all gorgeous. Goku makes it out and everyone revels in their success. The dress is safe, the wedding goes off without a hitch, and it's happily ever after from here on out. Or is it really? Dun dun dun.
These are okay episodes, I mean, for what they are.
There's a lot that happens. I mean, they're obviously compressing a lot of stuff into each episode.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I really liked about these episodes is you're starting to see, I don't know if they changed animation teams or studios or whatever, but you're starting to see a style that's a lot more reminiscent of like the Z portion of Dragon Ball as opposed to the beginning of original Dragon Ball. And you can see them starting to make changes to get ready for the next phase of the story.
Yeah, and these episodes all look great. Like you mentioned, like it doesn't make sense how long it takes certain things to happen or whatever, but the shots all look great, so you don't really care because everything looks so
and
good.
they also do a really good job of like ratcheting up the tension, and it's like really, because like you said, it almost wouldn't sell as well having these long drawn out scenes for these different things if they hadn't attach the appropriate amount of pressure to it, I think.
Right. And filler is one of those things where there's meh filler, which I would say meh filler is the stuff where, like, if you watch an episode and then you read the corresponding manga, it almost seems like there's no difference, except maybe they just hold on a certain scene for a little longer, or a guy powers up for longer, right? That to me is like the meh filler. That just stretches stuff out without adding or taking anything away. Then there's the bad filler, where the stuff that I don't like is a lot of that like stuff that we talked about with the Popo training. You're just repeating stuff that you have already done before.
Yeah.
It does get kind of boring because I don't need to see Goku learn to sense ki or use ki. He's been doing that for the other 150 episodes. Like,
yeah,
I don't need to see it happen more. And then there's the good filler, and this falls more towards the good filler. I think it has, even though it's all filler, it has some of the meh in it. Like, it has stuff that just kind of feels too drawn out, but it lands more on that good side of like, these are just adventures that are never, there's nothing else like this really anywhere in Dragon Ball. And I kind of like that. Think it gives you like its own unique flavor.
I get the feeling that like the choice for these episodes was very intentional, as sort of like a callback to the beginning of what the series was.
Yeah.
Where it was more adventure focused.
I would agree with that. And so we did I did a bunch of looking around, looking for, this is all filler, right? So this isn't anything that Toriyama ever did.
Mm-hmm.
But we still always try to figure out, well, like, why were these decisions made?
Mm-hmm.
And so in a bunch of these notes, maybe we've illuminated something. Maybe we've gone off way down the wrong path and we're 100% wrong. But
I'm going to go with option 2.
But there's some really cool, interesting stuff. So you go to the Dress in Flames episode, and there's the Octagon village, and then there's this whole arc's mild obsession with octagons. There's the Octagon village, the Octagon. Is the Bansho Fan Lake octagonal shaped? I think it is.
It's Octagon Village, and then it's the Bansho Springs.
I think the Bansho Spring is, like, the actual water is
yes, you're right.
shaped.
When he's flying over, it is octagon shaped. You're right.
And then there's like the episode called Outrageous Octagon, and then there's the 8-sided furnace, and all, like, there's like octagons galore.
Mm-hmm.
So I just did some, I don't know, I'll call it light Googling, I guess, and looked for like octagons, Japan's significance, octagons, whatever. Mm-hmm. I found an interesting bit of trivia. I don't know if this has anything to do with these episodes, but I found it pretty interesting. Azuchi Castle was one of the primary castles of Oda Nobunaga. Oda was a daimyo who was regarded as the first great unifier of Japan, being the head of the very powerful Oda clan, who attempted to unify Japan under one ruler, namely him, in the 1560s. He's got a very interesting history and life, and I'd encourage you to look into it further. But the absolute Cliff Notes version is that he became so powerful as to dissolve the Ashikaga shogunate and conquer most of Honshu, which is Japan's main island, by 1580. He was an important figure in military tactics and fostering trade, but also considered pretty ruthless, as many conquerors are. He would brutally suppress those who refused to cooperate with him. Ultimately, he was betrayed by one of his retainers in like an ambush when he was, I think, like praying, and forced to commit seppuku while on a visit to a temple near this Azuchi Castle. Oda is portrayed, I believe, fictionally in the show Shogun, which I still need to watch. And I think that show, that's the FX limited series or whatever.
Yeah, the one that just recently came out.
Yeah, I think that show is like every character has a name that's just made up, but their personality and their actions and everything, like kind of how things go, is very much based on a real life person.
Okay.
And so, like, if you go and look up just and I only did this very briefly, if you go and look up like the Wikipedia on Shogun, it'll be like, this person plays this character, and then in parentheses it'll be like, based on this person who's like a real life person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how important a role Oda has or what his counterpart is in Shogun, but Shogun takes place around the time that this guy was important and popular, or, you know, doing his thing. I also,
right,
quite separately, there was a clickbait article about Shogun complaining about the lack of African American people, and I was like, it's Japan. Like,
not only that, but isolationist Japan.
Yeah. I found this really interesting thing where I'm pretty sure it was Nobunaga was actually one of the first people to have a documented black retainer.
Oh, I think I've heard of him. I forgot his name.
But it's like, it's one of those things where it wasn't likely to be his actual name as the...
Oh, yeah, it was probably just like a given name or something like that.
Yeah.
Yasuke.
Yes. I thought that was pretty interesting. Like, there's this Nobunaga is one of the first people. Yeah, he was employed by Oda Nobunaga. He employed one of the first black people in like recorded Japanese history. So maybe that article actually had a point.
Like, it's possible. Maybe there should be a character.
Yeah. In any event, Azuchi Castle is considered one of the most important castles in Japanese history, as prior to its construction, such military outposts, which it mostly served as, were strictly military in design and function. They would be these crude, roughly formed structures designed only for strategic military purposes. So they'd have like dirt walls, and they'd just be kind of these mounds that would like house soldiers and things for, you know, launching their next attack, or supply chains and stuff like that. They wouldn't be anything more than what they needed to be.
Gotcha.
Oda wanted Azuchi, which stood near the capital of Japan at the time, which was actually Kyoto, to be both a symbol of military power and an impressive showing of wealth, knowledge, and civility. He built it with stone and put it along important trade routes where he could have strategic eye over Kyoto, but also be involved in commerce. It was a lavish 7-story high building, entirely decorated by the artist Kanu Eitoku. It was designed to be a full castle town, and kind of like a city unto itself. And via incentivizing people to live within its walls, Oda was able to build the population of Azuchi Castle City to about 5,000 people. Azuchi Castle is considered the catalyst for the establishment of early modern Japanese castles. And of significance here, when we're talking about all these Dragon Ball episodes, its uppermost floor was unique among all castles in Japan in that it was octagonal.
Oh.
Now, can we state with any amount of surety whatsoever that this castle's unique structure and historical importance inspired someone writing on the anime team for Dragon Ball to come up with octagons as a theme for these episodes? Of course we can't. No, we can't at all, but it's a cool parallel and an interesting thought exercise and something I learned. Today I learned. Also, when we get into the Fire Eater, the Fire Eater is this bird that lives in this volcano in the Dragon Ball episodes. Well, in Japan, there is a bird known as the Basan, and this is a legendary bird of Japanese lore that is also known as the Fire Rooster. It has a red plumage and spits a brilliantly hued fire, though it is said the fire does not burn. There could be some parallels here in that the Basan is said to not actually spit fire or burn and is more ephemeral or ethereal in nature. And if you remember, when Goku tries to collect the feathers, they like fall right through his hands. Mm-hmm. It's said that if a human being notices, or if a Basan notices a human looking at it, it'll vanish on the spot. And the Fire Eater is also it's not tangible outside the fires of the volcano. That's interesting. Maybe. And then you've got there's other, there's kind of a, I don't want to say obsession at all, but there's a lot of historical fire birds in Japanese folklore and Japanese fiction. And the one that just instantly springs to mind when we're talking about other, goofy cartoons that are sort of designed for kids is in the original 150 Pokemon, there's the legendary bird Pokemon Moltres.
Oh yes, that was definitely the one that popped into my head.
So it's, and there's also if you want to step outside of Japan, there's the Phoenix. This isn't an uncommon sort of
comparison, if you will.
Yeah, I always find that super interesting that a completely isolated culture like Japan from ancient Greece. That's where the legend of the Phoenix come from. Greece or Rome. Either way, I don't think it matters 100%.
It's not Japan.
Exactly. Would both of these cultures would have this mythology around this legendary fire bird. I find stuff like that. I also wonder
if both of those legends came from a similar chain of events. How different urban legends for monsters and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are usually the kernel of it is in some experience that a person had with an animal or a unique series of events that makes them think that it's this supernatural being. Right. So I'm wondering if there was a similar thing that happened that prompted both of those things.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I wonder. We'll never know, obviously.
No, obviously not.
I do. I always think that's so wild when cultures that are so far separated come up with such similar mythologies. Then we get into the episode Outrageous Octagon. The old woman, if you recall to Bekinney's synopses, he made a joke about she's the no tooth woman or something like that.
Yeah, missing tooth or no teeth women or something like that.
Her name in the Japanese version is Hakake, and that name literally actually means chipped tooth.
Ah.
And so I then thought this was one of those episodes. So previous two episodes, here I am thinking octagons. Is there anything with octagons? And I found something interesting. Fire Eater. I was like, there's got to be something. I know there's something with the Fire Eater. Mm-hmm. This episode, I was thinking, is there anything with a mountain and a mountain spirit that hates women, that snows when women are around? I couldn't find anything specifically about mountains getting angry when women dare to tread on them. Again, maybe my Google foo was lacking.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I couldn't find anything. What I did find, and this is one of those things where I find this stuff very interesting, when the anime staff seemingly picks up on some of the things and trends that Toriyama himself does or would do.
Okay.
So, in Japan, and I'll just state briefly, and then I'll kind of read these notes a little bit more in detail, but in Japan, there's this sort of legend about a snow woman who causes snowstorms to trap wayward men. The inverse of that would be snowstorms caused by the presence of women. And that's just a very Toriyama-esque thing to do.
Sure. Yeah, like, taking something well-known and sort of inverting it.
Yeah, doing the opposite, subverting your expectations. I always find that really interesting when the anime staff does stuff like that in their filler episodes that is like just so in line with what Toriyama would do.
Mm-hmm.
Was someone just very good at picking up his tendencies?
I'd imagine so, yeah.
Or was it like a complete accident? Like I just find that really fascinating. Like the fact that Toriyama ultimately does reference Zoo Warriors from the Magic Mountain, but the anime staff actually does first.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating. Like, they just know his tendencies so well that they're like, oh, I bet he would like this movie. Like,
yeah, I could see that, definitely.
So yeah, so there's all this Japanese folklore surrounding Yuki Onna, or the Snow Woman, which is a yokai, and we've talked about yokai a bunch of times. Go back and listen to every previous episode.
It's a pretty common thing for Japanese culture.
The Snow Woman is a yokai that is said to be a beautiful woman who oftentimes tricks people, and then you could get into like it's either intentionally or maliciously, or it could be accidentally, as just part of her nature, into being with her and freezing to death because of her natural snowy nature. This is a folklore story, but there's a lot of like popular and pop culture examples. The one that popped into my mind, and then continuing to read through some of the stuff that I was reading through, was also referenced, and so I was like, hey, I was right.
Nice.
Was the horror anthology Octagon, which I also think I've mentioned on this podcast before. Feel free to go back and listen to our previous 70 episodes and figure out exactly which one I referenced it on. I would absolutely recommend it, though. It's an awesome horror anthology. It is a bit long. It's like 3 hours long, but the segments there's no wraparound. There's no like tie-in segment.
So they're all just random self-contained stories?
Yes, everything just stands on its own, so you can sit and watch one or two and then walk away, like if you don't have the 3 hours to commit. There's a segment called Woman of the Snow. It's awesome, and it is 100% playing on this snow woman. And then if you've ever seen the Tales from the Dark Side movie, which, interesting factoid about that, Stephen King and George Romero and Tom Savini all worked on the horror anthology Creepshow.
Mm-hmm.
They also worked, and I don't know if Romero worked on Creepshow 2. I'm going to have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure Savini did as like the makeup guy. And I think at least one of the stories was the screenplay for Creepshow 2 was written by Romero. So Romero and King, because a lot of the stories are based on Stephen King stories.
Yeah.
And Savini all worked on the second one. Tom Savini has come out and said he considers Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, to be Creepshow 3. Because Romero again worked on the screenplay for that. One of the stories is from King. I would guess that means Savini was involved somewhere in the production of it, because I'm pretty sure, yeah, he did some of the makeup effects, and then he said, yeah, he considers that to be Creepshow 3. And also that means if you've ever seen the movie Creepshow 3 sitting out there, please avoid it at all costs. It's awful. It exists. It's terrible. But its final segment, which is of the Tales from the Dark Side movie, the final segment, which is also the best one, is called Lover's Vow. It has absolutely nothing to do with snow, but it's loosely based on the Woman of the Snow segment from Kwaidan. And then also Akira Kurosawa's Dreams, which I've still not seen. I'm still slowly working my way through the works of Akira Kurosawa. Dreams features a Yuki Onna as well. And the Pokemon Frostlass, which I'm unfamiliar with because that's got to be outside of the original 151, which are like almost the only ones that I know.
It definitely is. But
Frostlass is based on Yuki Onna. So this could be, again, what the anime staff is playing with here, with women being portents of snowstorms on this mountain. Who knows?
Makes sense. And that brings us to Mystery of the Dark World and The End and Beginning, which are kind of tied to the Mountain of Five Elements. So the five elements in Japan are earth, water, fire, wind, and void. In China, it's earth, wood, metal, fire, and water. In either case, honey is a major component of earth. Though fire is considered to create earth, as fire creates ash, earth smothers fire and is a weakening force against it. So you could probably do an entire podcast episode about the elements in Asian culture, as they differ greatly from those in Western culture. We concern ourselves with form and function with earth, fire, air, water, and air, while the Asian concepts have more to do with change, process, quality, and vital essences. So like in Asian culture, wood is not literally wood. It is the essence of trees. So this is a major component of Taoism, with the interconnected and changing nature of all things, and the unification of which is to reunite with the Tao.
And that's why Goku uses honey inside
to patch
furnace. Honey is a earthly material.
The Bansho fan is based on the banana leaf fan from the novel Journey to the West. There are many things in this show. This fan is one of the five sacred treasures of Daode Tainzun. I hope that's right. Who is one of the three highest Taoist divinities known collectively as the three pure ones. These are the three highest divinities of Orthodox Taoism, connected with the primordial beginning, the elements and their separation as well as yin and yang, and the creation of nature and the natural world. Daode Tianzun is associated with this third essence. When all three pure ones congregate, a complete return to Tao is present. Therefore, one cannot achieve true purity in Taoism without fully understanding all of the three pure ones. Lao Tzu is often regarded as a manifestation of Tao De Tianzun and the founder of Taoism. He, Lao Tzu, is said to have been born before heaven and earth after 72 years in his mother's womb. Oof, that poor woman. With the ability to speak with the ability to speak from birth. He is well, of course, he's already collecting Social Security by the time anyway. He is considered to be as eternal as the three lights of the sun, moon, and stars. Technically, he is ranked below the other two pure ones, but because he is closely associated with the creation of the physical realm, his name is mentioned more often than the other two in Taoist texts. The fan is said to have been begotten of heaven and earth at the Axis Mundi, which in Chinese mythology is considered the Kunlun Mountains. In mythology, an axis mundi is the inflection point between heaven and earth, where the barrier between the two is thinnest and one can cross over between the two. In Dragon Ball, we might consider Korin's Tower something of an axis mundi, as it ultimately leads to Kami's Lookout, which is in fact heaven, where God resides. Now, the fan is extremely large and has magical properties. It is wielded by Princess Ironfan, who was depicted as being several feet taller than Sun Wukong. Oh, sound familiar. The fan is said to be created at a time when chaos divided and is of the supreme yin energy, and thus can extinguish all fires, including the fires on the flaming mountains. That sounds familiar as well. The fan is said to create giant whirlwinds that are so powerful they can carry a man 80,000 miles if it's fanned at him. The only known thing immune to the fan's winds is a special elixir, which is luckily gifted to Sun Wukong by the Bodhisattva Ling Ji.
There's that 80,000, like 80,000, 800,000, 8,000, 8 million. It's like that.
Where it's that sort of colloquial, like, meaning infinite or forever. Yeah. In the novel, when Sun Wukong first attempts to obtain the fan, Princess Iron Fan tricks him and gives him a fake one, which serves only to intensify the flames of the fire rather than put them out. Which
sound familiar?
Wow, we're going beat for beat here. We also find out that Princess Iron Fan historically has been using the real fan at some she's like altered the capacity or efficacy of it by like not swinging it as hard as she could, or like think of the idea of like pulling your punch basically, and extinguishing the flames for a short period of time on the mountains annually. She does this so that people will worship her as a goddess and present her offerings in return for a short period of safety from the flames on the mountain. These things all sort of conflate together in these episodes, like we've just been pointing out all the parallels, where we see the flames of Fry Pan Mountain return, the Bansho fan doesn't work. And then as for the design itself, the Bansho fan looks almost exactly like the banana leaf fan, and it's basically a one-to-one comparison at this point.
Yeah, if you look up the banana leaf fan Journey to the West, it's
literally the same thing.
It's exactly the same.
They put paper on the screen and just traced over it.
I got to get my Godzilla reference in this episode.
Of course.
So Axis Mundi, going back to that point about Axis Mundi, the recent-ish at this point, I believe by the time this episode comes out, might be over a year old. Show Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, has the characters attempt to go into Hollow Earth. And it's like the show is set partially in the, I think, 50s and partially in the modern era. And in the 50s, the characters are trying to go into Hollow Earth. And then ends up being like all this weird, like, I don't want to say time travel nonsense, but I will say time dilation nonsense, right? Where when these characters go into Hollow Earth, or what they think is the Hollow Earth, they come out and it's like a long time later. That's not been a thing in the other MonsterVerse movies. If you've seen Godzilla vs. Kong, Godzilla blasts like the dumbest thing ever. If you've seen Godzilla vs. Kong and the humans need to take a magical portal to get them into the Hollow Earth. And then later in the movie, Godzilla blasts his nuclear breath into the ground and creates a hole to the Hollow Earth.
Okay.
That takes Kong about 5 seconds to climb out of.
So it's a lot like our eightfold furnace.
Yeah, but
in reverse.
But in order to try to explain away what the show wanted to do with this like time dilation stuff, they wound up stating that the characters aren't actually going to Hollow Earth, they're going to Axis Mundi. So like Axis Mundi it's a general, I don't want to say colloquialism, but it is a generally accepted mythological explanation for the point in any sort of religion or mythology or folklore where the afterlife and the regular life, or heaven and earth, or the underworld and earth come to like almost an inflection point.
Okay.
That's the concept of an Axis Mundi. And then they used that name for a dumb Godzilla show. Show itself was okay. Kind of.
At least we got our Godzilla reference in.
So we mentioned that the Banana Leaf fan is like a one-to-one comparison, and there's a whole lot of stuff that sounds super, super familiar. But showing that Dragon Ball is not a one-to-one comparison to Journey to the West, which we've talked about a bunch over the course of 3 years, going on 3 years now, is the character Anin, who is actually based on Dao Tianzun. Her title in Dragon Ball is actually Tajiro-kun. It's taken from the Japanese pronunciation of one of Dao Tianzun's names, Taishing Laojun. So that's where, again, we get to Dao Tianzun is a Chinese name, and then also he has multiple incarnations, one of which is considered to be Lao Tzu, and then also one of them is Taishing Laojun, and then you get into translating that into Japanese, and it's Tojiro-kun. That's just like how Journey to the West, or Sayuki, is like, because of the way you pronounce Journey to the West in Japanese, it becomes Sayuki in Japanese. In Sayuki, Taishing Laojun, which is the Japanese version of Lao Tzu, is the one who attempts to seal Sun Wukong into the mystical crucible and burn him alive, which he then finds the lone cold spot inside of, withstands the fire, and emerges stronger than before. And so you can see, even within these episodes, very loose, but that loose adaptation of this in Dragon Ball, again, it just feels like someone on the anime staff must have been picking up on Toriyama's themes and realized he loved subversions, and he decided, hey, let's make Lao Tzu or Taisheng Laojun a woman to go against what Japanese audiences would expect when encountering the keeper of the magical furnace. Her name may come either from a type of tofu that's known as Anin tofu, the Japanese pronunciation for the word almond, which is Anin, or the Japanese word for an apricot pit, which is also Anin. So no confusion whatsoever there. Especially because those are
completely different things.
Especially because those are all food puns, and we know for sure that people on the anime staff were like, Toriyama loves his food puns. Keep this character having a food pun name.
That's a fair point.
So we don't know where that name came from at all. And I, like, being that she's like the keeper of a furnace, none of these points directly to that. Again, couldn't find anything in researching, which, again, mostly consists of Googling around in free time, which is, I have a job, people, sorry.
Yes, recruiting for the Frieza Force.
Yeah.
No other job.
No, nothing else. I have no other commitments, no family. Well, no.
We're just in a spaceship in space normally. So what other commitments could you possibly have?
I'm not going to swim practices. That would be ridiculous. Where would you even swim out in space?
You can't. It's impossible.
Yeah. So in this limited free time that I have, though, I couldn't find anything that suggested Lao Tzu was ever known to carry a guandao, which is the sword/spear-like weapon that Anin wields. So this, to me, could be like another subversion where I couldn't find anything about Lao Tzu ever being considered like a master martial artist or carrying weapons or like anything like that. And this might be just another subversion of like, oh, here's this character, they're based on Lao Tzu. Also, you think because they're based on Lao Tzu, they'll be peaceful all the time. Oh, wait, they also are a good fighter.
I was going to say, because the Lao Tzu that I'm familiar with is like an Eastern philosopher. And so my expectation would be somebody who would be quite verbose and willing to talk out problems as opposed to fighting. And it is the complete opposite of that.
Right. So I don't know. Maybe not. Again, half the people that have worked on this stuff are, oh man, I'm making myself sad. Like half the people that have worked on this stuff are dead now. So we can't even.
Okay.
And then like on top of that, this is another one of those things where we're looking at this stuff, and this happens in all fandoms. You're looking at this thing decades after the fact that wound up catching on, that wound up being super popular, that today there's multiple podcasts and websites and conventions and a whole culture built around just this show. And you're trying to find out everything you can about its production and its histories and its facts.
Mm-hmm.
For the people that were working on it at the time, it was their job.
Yeah.
And they were like very often just trying to get through that day. Especially when you consider some of this stuff, like at some of these points along the way, the gap between manga chapter and anime adaptation was sometimes about 10 weeks or less. And these people are just trying to get a second to breathe.
They're trying to pad it out as best they can so they can actually get a break at some point.
Yeah. And you're going to go and ask, hey, were you thinking about this, and this? It's like, think about like the busiest day at your job, and you do have like an idea that winds up being pretty good, actually. And then someone wants to ask you 30 years from now, what made you think of that idea?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't know, man. I was just trying to get my rent paid.
Exactly. So that's like, that happens like a lot in this stuff is, and you get another Godzilla reference in here, is at G-Fest, the convention that happens every year in Chicago. They bring in guests, and, you know, over the years, you start thinking you've brought in every guest that you can until some intrepid and devoted fan / rep, like agent type of thing,
mm-hmm.
winds up tracking down the person who played the kid in this movie. And they invited that guy, and they asked him a bunch of questions, and he was like, he was like, I was like 8 years old. This was like something that I did for fun. And you're asking me like what the set conditions were like. I'm like an insurance salesman now.
Yeah, it would be like asking somebody like our age, like, what was it like going to Disney World when you were a kid? And it's like, well, I don't remember much outside of thinking it was awesome.
And I remember, do I remember certain things? Yeah. Are those things there anymore? Nope.
Yeah.
Do I remember some things? Yeah. Did those things ever exist? Maybe. Like,
yeah.
Your 7-year-old mind plays a lot of tricks on you.
It's true.
So yeah, that's like, you can't ever, it's very difficult, at least without someone specifically saying, this is what we thought about when we did this. You can't ever make that assumption.
Yeah.
And you also can't really.
It's still
rule
fun
out.
to make that assumption, though.
It is fun. And it's fun to do this, like looking into it and finding some of this stuff and finding some of these like again, just really interesting parallels between stuff that we know Toriyama did. We know that he would often say, like, I would subvert people's expectations and I would do the opposite of what they thought and the opposite of what I thought they wanted.
Yeah.
Which we know he did in the first tournament when everyone voted for Goku to win, and he was like, I was going to have Goku win, but everyone wants it, so I'm not doing that.
It's like that George R.R. Martin interview where he's talking about, like, when you write like a mystery story, and if people start speculating on who the murderer is and they get it right, and it's like, well, now you almost kind of want to change the story just so that they're not right, but you have to also kind of fight against that because you want to write a good story.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just so crazy when you find these, like, hey, that feels like something Toriyama would do. But we also know from Toriyama saying himself, like, he didn't talk to the anime staff regularly, and he didn't meet with them, and he didn't give them a whole lot of guidance. He was busy at this time. He's writing a chapter of manga every week and waiting until the last second.
And still not hitting his deadline sometimes.
And that's one thing I'll say in the wake of his passing is people have been very defensive about, like, stop spreading the lie that he didn't work that hard. No, we understand.
He absolutely worked hard.
He worked super hard. It is just, it's fun to paint that picture of what his personality was like, and that he was a procrastinator, and
sure,
that's like,
yeah, absolutely.
You can be a person like, I do this. This is how I operate at my job.
I was going to say, yeah, that honestly, in my perspective, it makes him more relatable as a person.
Yeah, I procrastinate often,
all the time.
You can work really hard and still be like a procrastinator by nature.
Yeah, or you can work really hard and just go, well, I don't want to do this because it'll save me time, and I've already got so much to do.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the end of Dragon Ball. Anything else about these episodes? I liked that idea that you floated, that these are like a cool parallel to Dragon
the
Ball's
early
beginning.
episodes. Yeah, and honestly, that kind of really elevates these episodes for me to being some of the better ones. Mostly just by virtue of the fact that they are the last ones. Like, this is kind of the last time we see this sort of, I guess, focus more on like adventure and exploration as opposed to here's the big bad guy we have to fight.
But so yeah, that's these filler episodes. Anything else on these fillers?
Not really. I guess my final takeaway is that the art's starting to get to a place that's more familiar, and in general, I think just a little bit higher quality than the stuff that we've seen so far. Which is a nice change.
On the art, we'll have to do a little digging at some point. Again,
see who was involved in these episodes and see if there's any crossover with Z.
Yeah.
Because it feels like there is.
I know. Again, we've mentioned this before. The reason that there's a change between Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z is that Kazuhiko Toriyama thought Dragon Ball should be more popular in the anime because, in his opinion, the Piccolo, the King Piccolo, Demon King Piccolo, and then Piccolo Jr. arcs were some of the best writing Toriyama had ever given him, and it was because it's because his mangaka was finally starting to listen to him. He told him, like, I need a more serious villain. I need like a real villain. And he was like, all right, here's the Red Ribbon Army. They're bad guys, and they won't like say they're sorry ever. And Toriyama was like, yeah, but these guys suck. like
they're not a challenge for a hero, basically.
Then he makes Piccolo, who is inspired, as we mentioned on our Piccolo episode, by Toriyama.
Which is the best. I always love that little bit.
And so Toriyama was thinking, boy, this show should be more popular. This is the best writing that Toriyama has ever given me. Why isn't the show more popular? He thought, and I guess you could ultimately say he was proven right, that it was because the producers, the showrunners of Dragon Ball at that point were the people who were the showrunners of Dr. Slump, and they were sticking too much to the Dr. Slump style, and they assumed because it was from Toriyama, it was still supposed to be goofy and silly, and they drew it and animated it that way. And I don't know how much they changed animation houses, but by changing like the showrunners, the two main, like the directors and producers, and giving the animation houses like slightly different direction, they were able to shift the style of Dragon Ball. And that's the shift from Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Z, is a shift in the animation style and the drawing style. Anyways, that's all I got to say about these episodes.
That's all I got. So are we almost at the ship yet?
Hang on, let me try the locator on the key fob.
I could at least hear it. Hang on, do that again?
Why?
Well, I thought I noticed something. Just do it, please.
Happy?
Actually, kind of. Something about our ship's locator's bothering the giant plant. It's throwing it off its equilibrium. You can even see its movements changed a little bit.
I see. So, can we just fly the rest of the way to the ship?
Well, I still think that would be an extremely bad idea.
Yeah!
But you just raised your power level to blast that bird person, so I don't think we have any choice. Smash that button and let's fly to the ship.
We'll take our leave of you here, listeners.
Quit signing off. Start dodging all the roots flying out of the ground, and let's get the hell out of here.
Will Bekinney and I be able to dodge the hundreds of thousands of roots that have clumsily reaching for us in their confusion caused by the ship's locator? Will we safely escape this planet? Find out next time and help us achieve our final forum.
Final Form is written and produced by Tom Gwelly. It is performed by Dan Kinney and Tom Gwelly. Our webmaster is Dan Kinney. Our theme music is provided by YouTube content creator GVG Kid. Want to learn more about the Dragon Ball universe, including concept art, behind-the-scenes interviews, and recommendations from Jelli and Bekinney? Connect with us on social media. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Forum Pod. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you receive your podcasts. And of course, make sure to share it with your friends and family and help us spread the word of the glory of Lord Frieza. The Frieza Force thanks you for your listenership.